Well, I'm liking the first issue, withdraw our terrorist troops immediately, stop using aid as a tool of war. It's interesting that they call our troops terrorist troops. Um, I know I've talked to a lot of people who have family in Afghanistan as troops, and I think that for them, whether through a media or whether through hearsay or anything, for many of those troops to be told you are terrorist troops would be an assault on their feeling of pride in what they're trying to do to help people who are oppressed by a terrible government. The Taliban is unquestionably one of the greatest sources of suffering in the world. It's a terrible regime. There's no question that the quest of trying to stop the Taliban from its murderous, unfair way of running things is a good thing to do. I think that to tell the troops that your involvement in Afghanistan is doing more harm than good, on a whole, in general, as a large-scale military, some of them might feel personally insulted, but you have to qualify it by saying that personally, on an individual level, I'm sure many of the troops have the people of Afghanistan and their well-being totally at heart, and they have a very good intention towards them, and they're doing a great job. But they have to look at their government as a whole, and look at the intentions of their government, and look at the interests being represented by their government: oil, drugs, and the fact that the government's first reason for being in Afghanistan is not helping people who are oppressed. It's not helping people to deliver themselves from an oppressive government. Their first interest in being in Afghanistan is to bolster a Canadian economy with resources that are not conducive to a sustainable world, and that are not necessary for the standard of living we have in Canada.
So which one would be your choice here?
Well, I haven't read them all, but
take your time, read them. Yeah.
Okay. Withdraw forces, send aid and support for diplomacy, listen to the people there and develop a real understanding, bridge the divide, bring in peace. Absolutely. I'm in favor of all those things. Don't have enough information. Well, I have enough information to make that above choice. I agree with our present foreign policy of intervention. It is our responsibility to participate in the U.S. war on terrorism. Absolutely not. Any Canadians that feel that way really need to learn a little bit more about this issue. Certainly, there are a lot of foreign councils that have recognized that there have been more deaths and more destruction in Afghanistan since Canadian involvement than there were before. Now, that's not acceptable. Withdraw from Afghanistan and redeploy in more needed areas such as Africa. I'm sure tempted to agree with that one. There are places where we're far more needed. That's a tough one. I'm going to change my vote to that one.
All right.
For now.
So you're changing to which one? Can you read it?
Withdraw from Afghanistan and redeploy in more needed areas such as Africa.
Mm-hmm.
There's way more pain.
So you think our troops should be participating in some other country rather than in Afghanistan?
Yeah, it's not like there isn't help needed in Afghanistan, mm-hmm. but it's not. Things aren't as drastic there as they are in Africa, not by a long shot.
Mm-hmm. What kind of help would the military do in Africa, say Darfur?
I'm not a military personnel, and I've never been there, and I can't even imagine what it's like to be a military personnel. So I can't even begin to answer that question. All I know is that on an individual level, people that I've spoken to who have involvement in the military, the ones that really care about protecting the people in endangered places, they know what to do. And I feel they should be in a place where there's the most harm being done. As far as Darfur goes, I mean, you know, there's these people fighting against these people. What do? Put yourself in the middle of it all and get shot yourself? Or do you attack one of them? I mean, it's not an easy question. You can't answer that in a paragraph, or much less an interview.
Yeah. Okay.
the labor movement is now firming up its positions at the Ontario Federation of Labor Convention, which took place just a few months ago.
Which is what?
The Ontario Federation of Labor.
What is the position that they're taking? You
say yes, I was going to explain that. They took a position calling for the immediate withdrawal of combat troops. The immediate withdrawal. Very important. And there was a roll call vote, and and there was a lot of opposition from PSAC and from particularly the UNDI, the National Union of National Defense Employees section of PSAC, but all of PSAC opposed it. And they hit the mics and they argued against this, and they made all the same arguments that you hear from, frankly, that you hear from the Harper cabinet. But when the count took place, it carried by, I think it was over 60%, 61% of the delegates voted in favor, not of withdrawal in 2009, or not when this condition or that condition. Very clear position, and a very good one.
And is that the same position as the Communist Party?
Well, we've always...
The labor movement is the same as the Communist Party?
Well, but we've always called for the immediate withdrawal of the troops. So we've always called for it, and there has been this confusion. I mean, let's be clear about it. A lot of NGOs at first thought that this was, they don't like to see war, but the Taliban, I mean, let's face it, the Taliban is a reactionary Islamic fundamentalist movement in many respects, and they certainly do oppress women. It's not a question of who's got the white hats, who's got the black hats, right? But the point here is that, there's a number of points that can be made here, without for a moment indicating that, or suggesting, or even, and I don't want anybody to infer this from what I'm going to say, that we somehow support the Taliban, because we don't. A lot of them were part of the so-called Afghan freedom fighters that fought against the progressive government in Afghanistan years ago, just like Osama bin Laden worked with the CIA and so on and so forth against the People's Democratic Party of Afghanistan when they were in government there. So, these are very reactionary and, backward and, bloody, feudal elements as well. But it is the right of any people to resist foreign occupation. But it's the right of any people. And if anybody came and occupied, foreign power came and occupied Canada, it would be our right to resist. It's a fundamental right. It's a matter of principle. So from that point of view, yes, and history has shown that the Afghan people, it's a right of all people to resist occupation, but boy, none have done it better than the Afghanis historically. The British tried to take them. So, our position has been consistent, I think you'll find, throughout in terms of that. Lots of other... Which is what?
Let's repeat that, because I want that specific statement on camera. That the Communist Party...
I'll say it again. The Communist Party is unequivocally opposed to the war in Afghanistan. We consider it to be an imperialist war, and we call for the immediate withdrawal of all military forces, including Canadian forces, from that.
So if your party was the government of Canada, you would stop the F-18s from dropping bombs in other countries?
You would stop which?
Would you stop F-18s, the airplanes that are dropping bombs in other countries? Would you ground them?
Well, yes. There'd be no military... but
the way we know.
The military aggression that's existing right now on this earth has to end. Is that too idealistic? Is that pie in the sky? I'm of the view now that we haven't got a choice anymore. This earth is dying and we're killing it. And people want to run around and talk about global warming. That's just red herring stuff.
A lot of people would say, but what happened to the economy? All the soldiers that are being paid high salaries, what are they going to do?
Come on. That's another something. we come to grips with it's possible to live on this earth and for people to live productive lives and make contributions according to their skills and abilities, and to have adequate forms of some form of payment for what they do so that they can live in their social order without having armies and paying armies and without having exorbitant profits being raked off by a small number. We're talking, you would say, pie in the sky utopia. I'm saying we don't have a choice.
Here's a question about affiliation with NATO and NORAD. Do you want to just take a quick look at it and see if you like some of the statements that have been uploaded there? Affiliation with NATO and NORAD.
Defense commitments and affiliations should be reviewed. Good option. Immediately withdraw affiliation with NATO and NORAD and shift support to UN peacekeeping missions. I like that even better. Our fundamental responsibility to the Western Alliance and an unquestionable commitment. I don't agree. Gradually shift their responsibility and resources to keep the United Nations peacekeeping forces. I can see some merit to that. Solely because if we were to immediately withdraw, I feel that the American administration would do such a great job of crippling the Canadian economy that we would be severely at risk. But you know, if we're willing to talk about peace, we should be willing to put our money where our mouth is and deal with the harm that comes our way as a result. It's tough to say whether we're willing to do that, obviously. But yeah, a gradual shift. I mean, in any case, everything done gradually is better than anything done immediately, suddenly, except for jumping in the polar bear swim. But
you think the United States wouldn't be as aggressive with us if we did it gradually than if we did immediately?
That's right. Yeah, I think so.
So your choice is which one?
Remain a level-headed partner in NATO and NORAD. Immediately withdraw affiliation with NATO and NORAD. I'm going to go for the gradual shift there.
The fourth one, which has about 10% support, you choose to say gradually shift their responsibilities and resources to the United Nations peacekeeping forces. Okay, so why do you think that out of 140 people that have answered this question, 40% of them say the affiliation should be reviewed, and another 26% say immediately withdraw, and only 4%, or no, 11% say gradually shift? Why do you think most people are not exactly in the same wave that you're representing here?
With the education system that we have in Canada, which teaches people as they're in their teens and as they're growing up about the history of our nation and the role of the military in our nation, people are led to believe that our military is necessary to protect us. I suppose to some degree that may be true, but they're never given any inclination whatsoever that the military is there to enforce the interests of giving Canada the resources that we want to have. So people think that we should be careful when reviewing our military involvements, because they think that to suddenly change things would leave us defenseless, and they think that by invading, by being a part of a force in Afghanistan, we're curbing terrorism.
Yeah, but here we're talking of NATO and NORAD. You think that this 40% of people that answered the first one, are they maybe misinformed?
It's not so much that they're misinformed, because they're going in the right direction to say that.
But you're not going in the same direction, so are you going in the wrong direction?
No, it's a very similar direction. To say that if you were to review your defense commitments, and then eventually after reviewing them, you came to the conclusion that you should be gradually shifting your responsibility away from NATO and NORAD and bring them towards United Nations peacekeeping, then that would mean that in the process of reviewing, you came to the same place I'm at.
So eventually they would come to that conclusion that you have now.
If they reviewed the issues thoroughly, I believe that's the conclusion they come to.
Just a second step.
That's right.
All right.
Well, our position has been very clear. NATO, from the day that it was established, it was established presumably, and in a most deceptive way to be a defensive alliance against the Soviet threat, against the Warsaw Pact threat. In fact, NATO was established before the Warsaw Pact was ever established. And in fact, the Warsaw Pact was in response to the formation of NATO. Our party has opposed NATO from day one. Who else can say that? Going back to 1947, 48, 49? 49, thank you. Right? It has always been an aggressive alliance. But its true colors really have, it's really flowered. I mean, even for those who were muddled or confused. Or, you know, back at the time of the Soviet Union, there was this superpower theory that, well, yes, U.S. imperialism, but also the Soviet Union, it's the other superpower and so on. And there was this rivalry between superpowers, which of course completely obscured what was happening in terms of international relations. Right? It wasn't so much states, but rather, you know, social systems. There was certainly a struggle between social systems, and you could say in that sense even internationally like a class struggle. But you know, during that period there was a lot of people in the peace movement who would agree no to the cruise missile testing in Alberta, no to the Pershing II missiles in Europe, and no to Star Wars, etc., etc., etc. But boy, it would get stuck in their throat when they got around to NATO, right? Because, you know, well, the most advanced, the most anti-imperialist sections of the peace movement have always been clear on this. But after the dismantling of socialism and after the disappearance of socialist governments in the former Soviet Union, Eastern Europe, and so on, and the Warsaw Pact, etc., 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 the real character of NATO has become clearer and clearer. They developed a new doctrine, which expands their reach. It's nothing to do with the North Atlantic anymore. It has basically to do with the whole globe. They've said that they can go anywhere in the world as a policing agent to defend their interests. And really, that's what it's all about, defending their political, economic, and strategic interests of the imperialist powers. So we have consistently called for Canada's withdrawal from NATO. We think that the alliance itself should be disbanded. But whether or not it gets disbanded, Canada should get out. And Canada needs to get out of NORAD as well. Because NORAD is the ticket through which, of course, the Star Wars 2 program is being implemented. So yes, we're very, very clear and on the record on that point.